Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friends of the Force, a Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Brad.
And I'm your host, Sarah.
And this week on the show, we are back with our High Republic Phase 2 coverage, and we are talking about Lydia Kang's Cataclysm. Air horns, because sound those horns on Delna. The battle is about to ensue. Air horn, more like war horn, because it's the Night of Sorrows, baby.
It's klaxon.
Klaxon, yeah.
Anyway, you had a better transition than I was going to do, but I'm going to do mine anyway. You may be like, Sarah, Brad, your interview with Lydia came out a while ago. You're right. It did. And we're here to bring you the discussion now. That's it. That's the end of the conversation. You know, we hope that between then and now, you've read the book and we're all ready to go in this conversation together.
Exactly. That's right. We haven't had a book discussion since April 6th when we talked about Battle Scars. But yes, our interview with Lydia Kang did happen. We will link it in our episode description. But that was pre-celebration. We've had a busy month.
She's awesome.
You know, it took a couple weeks to get back in the groove, and then we had Visions and Young Jedi Adventures, and
I went to 3 Yoongi concerts.
3 Yoongi concerts. A lot of stuff going on in our lives. I'm going to Taylor Swift this weekend at the time of recording. It is a good time to be Brad and Sarah. Let us tell you, folks. And it's even better because we're back talking about our bread and butter, the High Republic. That's our thing. That's our thing.
I'm going to give you like a
little high five,
gold star pin on like the incredible transitions that was. You really just brought it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're so good at that. Like, I just want a compilation of all your excellent transitions.
Thanks.
Folks, listeners, you have to understand that we're a duo here that used to take like 3 takes to start our podcast. And now Brad is just out here throwing transitions left and right, and they're always just so smooth, you know? I'm just a proud co-host.
Really embracing the Axel Greylark energy, because you think I'm going one way and then I go another way all of a sudden. And then you're like, why do I host a podcast with this guy? Like, you're the Gella of the situation and I'm the chaos Axel that's just like, hello.
You're like, why am I here? Close away. You're this close from me just deciding to give up on you. And then like also sending you to jail in the process, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Although I don't have the ability to make myself throw up on command and become sick, as Axel does.
That sounds like...
Could be useful, though. It could be useful. If I want to get out of a situation and just be like, oh, sorry, you know, and then
but that just
awkward conversation done.
Like, oh, I'm faking having like shivering fevers. Like, I don't know. Like, that's... I don't like being sick. I still wear my mask everywhere in public. Yeah, same. Like, I'm pretty serious about that. And here Axel is out here like, anyway, I got to get out of this situation. So let me like fake being like mortally ill.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
That sounds like of all of the party trick talents that you could have, like, that's not the one I'd want.
I feel like there are better uses of talent, but you know, let me tell you. They got a really good use of talent with this book because Lydia Kang came out with a banger. We are so excited though, because again, this is the first book discussion of Phase 2, Wave 2. We're in the golden wave. We won't have another golden wave until Phase 3, Wave 3. It's gonna be a long time,
which is about to like actually. Honestly, we should probably start digging our own graves because we're gonna have to like bury ourselves on them when we get there.
Phase 3, Wave 3. We're talking like Celebration Japan, post Andor season 2, post Acolyte season 1. Like, that is a far, far time away, and we're gonna live in the moment here.
It's a far, far time away, but also just like think of the end of spend a little bit of time thinking about the end of the High Republic.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying in the sense of, like, I mean, it's not the end of the High Republic. They're going to keep mining that time period because like they would be stupid if they didn't, because it's so good. But like, can you just think about like Axel and not Axel. Axel's in this wave. What am I talking about? Avar and Elzar and Bell and Buryaga, who is alive, and Stella Gios, who also is alive in my dreams. Like these characters all having like some sort of legitimate resolution to their stories. And it probably is going to mean death for a lot of them. Like, I don't know, but like it scares me.
Not Vernestra Rowe, at least. We know that much.
Yeah, she's going to live. Good for her. I also would really like my queen, Avon Staros, my little inventor.
Yeah.
tiny little bestie to live because she's cool.
I agree. And Honesty Weft, for sure.
Honesty Weft, of course.
Which Dalna, a fellow Dalnan.
Zine.
We learn a little bit about the Dalnans.
Lula. Sorry, I'm just thinking about all the characters that have to live. All of them, Brad.
They all need to live. Although if you picked up that issue of the High Republic Adventures on Free Comic Book Day, maybe you're not feeling so good, Mr. Stark.
Brad, you're saying that to me, but you picked me up an issue of that.
I have so many things to send you. I have so many things.
You have that. So you can't be like, well, if you picked it up, I didn't, Brad. I know you're saying that to the theoretical listener, but like, I'm not.
Can you keep blaming me though if I keep adding things to your little gift package and that's why I don't send the gift package and you're like getting more things in the gift package?
I blame you?
It's a net positive for you.
It's a net positive for me.
It just takes a long time.
In a nebulous future. Like,
it's like a net positive via carrier pigeon.
Like my heart could stop beating tomorrow, Brad. Like I could be done on this earth.
Well, then I get to keep the black chrysanthemum pin. What a seems like a win-win for me.
Brad, if I die.
One less audio track to edit. Sheesh.
That was
I kid.
No, you're serious. Brad is a very good editor and he works very hard, but I know that if he had one less audio to edit, he'd be a happier man.
All right, we are getting off the rails and we are only 8 minutes into the show.
I've got tears in my eyes.
I want to speak on your point about like, oh my God, it's weird to think about the end because yeah, I feel a bit strange now talking about the end of phase 2 and then like the next wave of High Republic books that we're going to be getting are going to have Avar, Elzar, Marchion Ro, Bell. Like we are at the end of this little hiatus and detour that we've taken in the High Republic, and that's pretty like this is the last Del Rey book that we will talk about within the High Republic until the Eye of Darkness featuring Elzar and Avar. Like the next episode of a Del Rey High Republic novel is that.
Yeah. It feels like it's when did phase 1 end?
Oh my gosh, so long ago. January 2022. It's been over a year.
Wait, really?
Well, actually March, because Midnight Horizon and Mission to Disaster came out later than Fallen Star. So yeah, it's been over a year.
You're telling me, hold on. It's the middle of May 2023.
It is.
Right now.
It is.
And you're telling me right now that I have not read a phase 1 character in phase 1 since March 2022. Does time really move like that?
Indeed. Yeah. Our last, we were talking about Cantum Psi. We were talking about Wreath, Comac Vetus.
Add Cantum Psi and Wreath and Comac Vetus to the list of characters that we must save. They better not die.
Correct. Yeah. And we'll have more. We'll have more because you make a good point
for Comac.
About Midnight Horizon. We're talking about that now. We will have more. We will have more at the end of this, towards the end of this episode. We got some stuff.
That's like the tease transition. It's like the Sarah get back on track transition.
We are bringing the heat today. We are bringing you some phase 1 connections. We are bringing you hashtag Egg Talk. Egg Talk is back with a vengeance.
Egg Talk is back
with a fury, with a rage, perhaps
with a fear,
with a
with a path,
with a leveler,
a path of vengeance, perhaps
with a post hatched egg leveler. The Egg Talk has hatched. Oof, big oof.
The Egg Talk becomes leveler. Just becomes hashtag leveler talk.
Ooh. It's not a bad name. Not a bad name. But yeah, this is the last adult novel we will talk about for quite some time. We got some books over the summer that we're excited to get to, but we will also be talking about Quest for Planet X by Tessa Gratton. We'll talk about Path of Vengeance by Cavan. So we're going to be finishing those up in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for conversations on those books, and then
after the next couple of weeks, to be really clear.
Yes, those are in progress at the moment.
Stressing me out.
But wait, there's more over the summer. If you want to catch more of our High Republic discussions, we got some comics to catch up on. So our hope is to catch up on some of those over the summer and talk about those on our Patreon. That's the only place that we talk about comics. So if you want to support the show in a new way. And if you have the means to, Patreon's a great way to support us, help keep the lights on, pay for our website so we look legitimate, pay for the
Because
domain
otherwise
name.
we look like a bunch of goofs. Which, I mean, we are. So thanks for providing us legitimacy.
So we're not just Brad at wixsite.com, please.
Yeah,
So,
especially considering there are 2 hosts on this show these days. It would have to be Brad and Sarah at wixsite.com. Okay.
That was what it was when I started. I'm pretty sure I'm having war flashbacks to the original domain name.
Like Brad, like JXWY24896W.wix.com, like.
And it's like, pay us like $50 and you won't have that anymore. I'm like, gladly, here's my money. Please get that off my eyes.
Anyway,
my eyeballs. Anyways,
comics on the Patreon. We're committed to catching up on comics because we are High Republic completionists, for better or for worse.
Yeah, but also it seems like a lot of people have been enjoying the comics from this phase, which I'm excited about, because phase 2 has been a little bit of an anomaly in some ways, just in the separation from our known characters and how quickly it's gone by. So any other stories that we can get our hands on helps us to feel like more grounded and maybe more attached to this time period within the High Republic. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. 100%. Looking forward to it.
But before we get started, every book episode, we have an independent bookstore of the week. Sarah, take it away.
Yes. So I actually am bringing you 2 bookstores this week. It's because it's phase 2, wave 2, 2 bookstores. And also I'm just sitting in high levels of alarm of what is going on in Florida right now with regards to trans rights and queer rights and just rights of all people in Florida. And so I wanted to bring you 2 queer-owned bookstores in Florida to check out and support. Okay, that's my spiel. Our bookstores are Tombolo Books. That's Tombolo. Tombolo. Anyway, every art city deserves a curated bookstore. They are a locally owned independent bookstore in St. Petersburg Grand Central District. They have new fiction and nonfiction titles from around the world. And they have a whole banned books section on their website. As we know, this is an important topic throughout the U.S. Florida is an especially important state where this conversation is ongoing. And not only do they sell banned books or books that are being challenged across the nation, but they also have local resources for folks in the area to get involved and help make sure these books are accessible for their community, as well as they have organizations about statewide and nationwide organizations like PEN America, Florida Freedom to Read Project, and the ALA Office for Intellectual Freedom. So if you're interested in any of those resources, that's at tombolobooks.com/banned-books, which you can guess by that is tombolobooks.com is where you can check out this awesome bookstore and get more information and buy from them. Because it looks like they do ship, they do pre-orders, they've got book clubs, they've got staff picks on their websites. I think all bookstores should have staff picks. That's just like my hottest take about bookstores, because it's really
the best
cool
part
to figure out
about the indie bookstore.
Especially if you can't go in person, it's a really great way to know what people are reading. People who are pretty knowledgeable about what's happening in the world of books are reading. One of my faves, Mysterious Galaxy, they maintain a pretty good social media presence as well. So like you can figure out what they're reading because they're always on their Instagram reels and TikTok. So like stuff like that I really love. Anyway, tombolobooks.com. Our second bookstore is Hello Again Books. They're a used and new local bookstore and gift shop in Cocoa Village, Cocoa, Florida, which that's a great name for a place, if you ask me. And they look to be like a super, super cute little shop. And they have 3 pillars as a bookstore. Their core values are community, diversity, and creativity. So they're all about creating a really welcoming, inclusive space. And they are a queer-owned, women-owned bookstore. And one thing that they do within their community is Be the Rainbow, which is a event that they're holding here in the second weekend of June in the area to celebrate diversity in the community and to celebrate and support their queer folks in their community. And so they've got like lots of events going on and ways to contribute or be involved. And I thought that was a great, fun thing that they're doing for their community. And also they seem to be a great place to visit and buy from. I do not believe they have an online store. So if you are in Coca Village in Coca, Florida, check them out.
Yeah. Also, it says here that they raise money each year for nonprofits and they choose a different one. And this year's is Bikers Against Child Abuse. And it says 100% of the money that they raise through these Be the Rainbow events goes towards that nonprofit. So that's pretty cool that they choose a new one each year. So that's another good incentive to go. It's for charity, also for supporting a local business, one that definitely needs it during these awful times that we're living in, especially if you're a Florida resident. And many
but
of
also
the
all over,
all over the country,
US,
and definitely.
beyond. You know, I find that we're living in alarming times, and I hope that we can get through this stronger and better. And I think we all need to be informed and just aware of what's going on, because the rights of queer folks and the rights of trans folks in particular are being particularly threatened in this time. And it scares the living shit out of me. Honestly, it really does. So yep, that's that. Anyway, this website is helloagainbooks.com. That's where you can visit them, learn more about them. So just to overview, we have tombelowbooks.com and helloagainbooks.com. Those are our two bookstores of the week. Thank you for your time, listeners. Go read some books.
Hell yeah. Reading books is awesome. It's cool. You should be doing it along with us.
You should know that we both have bookshelves behind us in our backgrounds, in our offices.
We do. Yes.
It's because we're book people, and this is a book podcast.
Many of the books I haven't read, but I'm getting to them, baby. I'm getting to them.
He says point. As he's not getting to them.
I say as I buy another copy of the Silmarillion and I don't read it. You can never own too many Lord of the Rings copies, let me tell you.
I'm pretty sure you can.
I own 6 copies of The Hobbit, and I'm thrilled with that. So, but I have read The Hobbit multiple times, so it's
okay. That gives some justification to why you have 6 copies. Anyway,
anyways, that being said, let's talk about a book that we particularly enjoyed, and that is Cataclysm by Lydia Kang. This will be a full spoiler discussion. So if you haven't read the book, or if you just want to know what's going on in the High Republic, you don't care about spoilers, and you just want to hear what we think, and maybe it's something that intrigues you, and then you want to go back and read, continue listening. But again, full spoilers ahead. If you don't want to know what happens in this book, turn away now, come back later, and tune into our discussion, because we go deep. We go deep on these things. We have really good informed discussions about theme.
You're just
and
hyping us up. Okay.
Character. Well, we might have some first-time listeners, first-time High Republic episode. So we really like go all in. We love like picking apart the relationships and the things that speak to us, and also relating a lot of what we read in these books to our own world and our own experiences. And that is some of the fun with reading, is that it's very personal for each person, and we find different meaning in these stories. And I think this was one that we can definitely look to and find a lot of meaning from. As it relates to characters like Axel and Gella and Kyong Greylark, especially, which I was very excited that we get to talk about Kyong Greylark like at length for once. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Speaking of themes, hey Brad, I've got my microphone pointed at me.
What's up?
My fake microphone, like as if I'm like Billy on the street, but like really, really friendly.
As you're talking in front of your normal,
hey, name a woman,
real microphone. Yeah.
Right. For $1, name a woman. Hey, Brad, how do you feel about redemption? Oh, wait, hold on. Let me do that again, because listener, you can't see it, but I moved my hand as like my fake mic away from me while I was asking the question. That's not how that works. Hey, Brad, how do you feel about the idea of redemption?
I love it.
Good.
Redemption, good.
Because we will talk about it in this episode. That was a good bit, Sarah. Keep this in. Keep the whole thing in. Don't even edit it a little bit. This is funny.
Too good. We're too good. But yes.
This is really where my Twitter bio, I think I'm really funny, but I think people think I'm less funny than I think I am, like really is hitting for me right now.
Nah, she's true comedian, honestly. You got to just start doing stand-up. I believe in you.
That would be terrible. I'd be really bad at it.
Yeah. I would throw tomatoes at the people throwing tomatoes at you. I'll be there for you.
Thank you for supporting me.
Yeah.
That's what besties are for. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Cataclysm. Here we go. This is the point of no return, and let's get started.
Yeah, so what's up with everybody dying again?
Everybody died. No, actually, everybody did die.
Like, I get that we're in the High Republic, but like, why do they keep doing this to us?
Man, this book, I told you this while you were reading it, because I'd finished a little bit before you did, and I was like, this book has really big Rising Storm energy to me. I felt like it kind of had that big, explosive, all roads lead to this point sort of vibe. And Rising Storm definitely had that, where you had the Valo Fair, Republic Fair, and then you had all of the Republic forces and the Jedi converging on the Nile at the end of the book. And so this kind of felt like the same thing, where the Republic, the Jedi, the Dalnans, the Path, they're all converging on this one space. And it's like all stakes are the highest that they've ever been. People are dying left and right. The Leveler is on the loose. And it just had that sense of dread and tension that I was hoping for. Not that other books haven't. But I think Convergence did a really good job of building out these two worlds and making us understand the key characters. And then Lydia just comes in with like the finale piece of it. And I think looking at the duology of those two books between Zoraida and Lydia, I really love these two things together. And it's like, it really serves as a great duo. And when you slip the Battle of Jeddah in there in retrospect, I think the Battle of Jeddah really is sort of a transitional piece in a way to get us to Cataclysm. And a lot of what I expected in Battle of Jeddah really happened in Cataclysm in terms of the action and the stakes. So,
oh yeah, right. Because Battle of Jeddah served as like this transition, but also this reset button, right? Because it was like, okay, we've gotten to this point where we can sign this treaty and be politically better. But Battle of Jeddah was like, psych, the path is still here. Rewind, press play, but like, it's like rewinding, but you have all the knowledge of everything that's come before.
Yeah.
So,
and also a big impetus for the Jedi to actually go to Dalna, because of like Battle of Jeddah ended up being crucial to what, the end of phase 2, as well as the knowledge that we will take into phase 3. It put us on that path, so to speak.
The path.
You
could path. The path. That's so funny. Yes. Ultimately, I agree with you. It's interesting to take a step back, because in many ways, I think a lot of the things that mark what the High Republic is in our minds based on phase 1, which I think has a lot to do with like the presence of the Leveler and how the Leveler incites fear in the Jedi specifically. I think like every time in phase 1, we came back to this idea of the Leveler and fear in the Leveler, and how many times our Jedi would encounter this. But in this phase, the High Republic, the idea of what the High Republic is, gets expanded a lot, because I was listening to Cataclysm and, on a walk and listening to the battle. And I was like, you know what? This feels like typical Star Wars, and not in a derogatory sense, but it doesn't feel like the same as phase 1, because it's not, right? Phase 1 has a lot of different players and different kinds of players than phase 2 does. And phase 2 is a bit more of like a chess game, I think.
Yeah.
With the politics and with the paths plan, and with the ways that these characters are interacting with each other, the types of characters that we're following. Whereas phase 1 is less of a chess game. It feels like maze tag. I'm making a game up right now, but imagine you're in like a maze where like it's all like tall. It's like, where Cedric Diggory dies in Harry Potter?
Right.
It's like that. Phase 1 is like that.
Uh-huh.
And phase 2 is like chess.
Gotcha.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Listener, are you with me? I hope so. They feel different. And so I think when I thought about it, it's like, oh, why is it not hitting in the same way that phase 1 did? And I was like, Sarah, duh, it's different. Like it's got a different feel and a different point to this phase than phase 1, which I think, and sometimes works in its favor and sometimes works to its detriment. But I think like it's ultimately a net positive that we did get something a little bit different here, because it expanded the idea of what the High Republic is.
Yeah, and it's setting up those chess pieces, like you said. The chess pieces are getting set up in this phase. It's about two planets coming together. It's about opening up this hyperspace lane to the Hetzal system at the end of the book, which is going to be like the centerpiece.
Record scratch,
you know,
stares into camera, shit.
That's the biggest of chess pieces, right? And then phase 1 is all about Martian Rowe coming over, grabbing that chessboard and chucking it against the wall.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. That's why we're in a maze tag.
Yeah, and I think that's when you think about it in those terms, phase 2 ultimately, like when you kind of realize it serves when you look at it for the part and the whole for the whole, and in the purpose that it's supposed to serve, not the purpose that you want it to serve, then you can really start to appreciate phase 2. Even though we are spending less time with these characters, and even though it kind of went by much more quickly than the typical three wave phase, but I still feel like looking back, I got a lot out of it. And I think Lydia Kang did such an excellent job taking a multitude of characters, and even in the final hour, giving somebody like Axel and Kyong and even Gella like all meaningful ends to their arcs, and not necessarily ends, some ways beginnings for those characters, because I know we will get more of them in Tales of Light and Life, and who knows where else they might be expanded upon, and also like characters like Yaddle, and getting to illustrate her a bit, and learning more about Yoda and some of his kindness, as well as some of his bullshit that we will get to and we will talk about, because Yoda, you fucked up, man.
What if Yoda is the key to all of this, but like not in a
good way?
It's like how people are like Darth Jar Jar, but like Yoda. I think of like that theory, but like
Yoda is like the second imposter, of Among Us. Like you have the imposter, which is like Martian Rowe, but then like Yoda is like accidentally another imposter who's gonna like eject everybody out the airlock.
It's like when you have enough people in your lobby that you don't realize that you have two imposters playing, and then you're like, wait a second, why did this game end so early? And then like the results page comes up and you're just like, there were two of them, and then the two people in your friend group are like, bitch. You thought, like,
oh my gosh.
Yes, we are speaking from personal experience. We need to play Among Us again. We need to talk to the crew. We need to bully them to all be free. And anyway,
but speaking of stabbing, though, the action was really well written in this book as well. I thought like the sequences were exciting. They were emotional, like the Ada and Creighton scene where they're saying goodbye to each other. Like that was
Lydia.
The first time I really had tears in my eyes throughout the High Republic phase 2. I was like kind of crying. I was like, I've known Ada and Creighton for 2 seconds and I'm sad. Like, what is happening to me?
Yeah, Lydia, what was that? I know we've already talked, but we need to talk, like, yeah, that was really sad. And just the ways that like the leveler was described and the way that people came across leveled bodies, like there was just like a sense of like real unsettledness there that I thought was convincingly written for sure. And some emotional heartstrings there. Also, the whole sequence when Gella is like pulling Axel through the water, even though he's got like a chest wound and is bleeding, and and she's like trying to save his. That was very vivid in my mind.
It almost felt like a rebirth too, right? Because I think Yaddle and Yoda like pull them out of this like slush and everything, and the water like comes out with them. It literally is like them emerging from like another like a womb, like they're being like reborn,
right?
There's some imagery there
in the phase of a rebirth or like a baptism. We can make up symbolism.
We talked about this too in our Path of Deceit episode, right? We talked about water symbolism and flood symbolism because the Great Flood happens in Path of Deceit. Remember that? And so like water and Dalna kind of go hand in hand, like these floods that keep happening at crucial times.
Right.
And this, this underground area flooding and letting go of Axel and Gella is a new step for them in their life. And they both literally wake up in the hospital immediately after in the book and are like, okay, onwards now in our new life.
Onwards.
Like just for once, everybody lives. And I was so happy that Axel didn't burn out in a blaze of chaos like a supernova as he sometimes thought. And I'm glad Gella didn't die just when her Jedi journey was truly beginning as a way seeker, and they do now get to live on and have a life and explore the galaxy and find personal redemption and find opportunity and challenge and identity, within themselves. That's the most hopeful thing of all, in my opinion.
I agree with you. We're not really big fans of redemption via death here at Friends of the Force. So anytime when a character gets to go on a journey themselves towards a better future, towards a redemption for themselves and with others, like that's a huge, gigantic A+ win, gold star, 10 out of 10 thing for me. Like I live for that stuff. So I was really happy to see it here. And I pulled the quote, and we'll talk about it later, that Axel says to Gella right before they part. And I loved it just so much. It was so plain, but human and thoughtful, and I think really hopeful. Yeah, big fan.
And I love too that Gella, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but last point here being that Gella recognizes on the ship as it flies away with Axel on it, that she senses the peace within him finally, but also for the first time throughout however long she's known him, she senses hope. And I think of Star Wars Visions, Journey to the Dark Head, which we just talked about on the show. Ooh. And the idea that the future carries as much hope as it does despair, right? So even though Phase 2 is sort of ending with this concealment and this forebodingness of the Hetzal system and all these things, and in the same token, it is a happy ending for our Phase 2 characters. We do get that joining of the two worlds, that first celebratory event of Irem and Arano, and coming together, and Ziri and Fontu succeeding in this goal and this vision that they had, and Gella and Axel finding growth on their journey, and Kyong turning over a new leaf, and Malo finding his own leadership within himself and his voice that I feel like he has maybe felt wasn't quite there, or he couldn't quite express under a dual chancellorship. So there's just a lot of like really hopeful things for our characters despite the future holding despair. And I think that's something that can consider within Star Wars, is like you can have hope and despair equally. And just because there is despair on the horizon doesn't mean the hope and the peace in this story and the purpose in the story doesn't matter. It's like these things matter for these characters in this moment. And that's why it is hopeful. And that's why it is meaningful for them, even though everybody's going to turn to dust.
And that's why we love Andor and The Last Jedi. Send tweet. Like,
yes.
Yeah. Hope and despair. These ideas, I mean, it all comes together on the back of the book. We love a good quote on the back of the book, and I think this kind of like sums it up really nicely for us. And it's said by none other than Queen Yaddle herself, who speaks in a regular English sentence structure and not like Yoda. Questions. I have so many of them. Anyway, she says, there is no losing until there is nothing worth saving. Even when we feel most alone, there's always something to save. Trust in the Force. And I just like really want to hit on that. There is no losing until there is nothing worth saving. It really goes into like, that's how we win. Bros quote, right?
I was like, just thinking that. And it also Samwise
framing. The
Samwise Gamgee of it all. There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Like even in the darkest of times, like when Mordor is winning and the orcs and the Uruk-hai, like they still push forward. They still push into Mordor and destroy that ring.
Rad. One lone candle can ignite the stars. Yeah. My guy.
There is always a candle that is ignited, even if it's the smallest of flames. Like there's
even
always
it's literally
something.
Just like a tiny little tea light.
Yeah.
Right. My thought, it goes back to like the end of TLJ when Little Broom Boy, my best friend in the whole world is Little Broom Boy. When he just looks up at the stars because he has, a smidgen of hope. And I think about that a lot. Like when I'm at my lowest, like what I try and do when the weather is good is just like stand in the sun's warmth for a bit. And that is the reminder in itself that like there is something around, right? Even if it's just a little sliver, it's just like the warmth of the sun reminds me that I'm alive and like that's important. And so like there's always something worth saving. There's always something worth fighting for. not fighting against, but always something worth fighting for. Anyway, I think I'm saying the same thing now. So,
and sometimes you lose sight of what that thing is, right? And it might take you a moment to remember it or to recognize it, right? And that's when I think you can utilize the people in your life who care about those same things and also want to save those things as well. And that's the importance of like community and organization and coming together. And that's what I love the most about these stories. It's about relationships. It's about people bringing out the best in one another. It's about people like Gella giving Axel a second chance. But to Gella, he is awful and she can't resist him, but she sees that there's something within him worth saving, despite like the shell of Axel Greylark and like who he is and the decisions that he has been making constantly. Like she still sees something within there, that hurt boy who lost his dad and essentially lost his mother to politics. And she's like, I can change him or I can save him. I can help him. Not even save him. She just wants him to have a second chance and actually use it.
She wants him to.
She does.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, she wants him to crack open his own shell and step out of the character that he has, that he thinks is necessary to portray in order for self-preservation. And I think that's what's so interesting about Axel is like, he's really not bad. Like he's not a bad guy, I think by any means. I think that like, he's a guy who like really took one step off the path out of grief and out of pain and out of trauma, and then kept taking steps on that path. And it wasn't the good path, And because he was already on that path, it's like the sunken cost fallacy of like, oh, I've invested so much into this path that I can't go back. But that was the shell that he had built from himself. He knows on the inside, every time that he makes a choice, he feels a lot of guilt, and he feels a lot of frustration. And we hear him like express that, or we get told that he's expressing that like throughout the book. And you know that he wants to be this sort of person, but he just feels like he's taken 6 steps to the left and he's too far from the path now to like get back on it and like, get back on the horse and keep riding. And like, that's what I think is so interesting and compelling about him as a character, is he exists much more in that gray space that I think you and I, as readers and as fans of Star Wars, really enjoy. Like, yes, we love Darth Vader and we love Kylo Ren. We're big fans of these guys, Kylo Ren especially, we're big fans. But in a lot of ways, like Axel hasn't done anything nearly. I mean, okay, well, he did the city. The city situation was a situation.
He did blow up some stuff and kill some people.
To be clear, that wasn't good. That was pretty bad.
Not one of his finer moments, no.
But like, is he like the co-leader of the First Order? Like, no. Does he have a lightsaber? Did he like kill his parents? No. I think these are points for him. I have to say.
Yes.
But like, you look at Kylo Ren and you look at Axel and you're like, okay, these are people who have walked different paths. And I think that they're on the same, I've taken too many steps from the path and now I've, put too much into this. But like the actions that we see Axel do throughout the story, and exist on a different level of like badness than what Kylo Ren is doing. You know what I'm saying? Like the implications are different for their actions. So I think like they feel like quite different characters. I will stop talking now. But point being, Axel is compelling because he is really on the inside somebody who desires to be loved and to be included and to be heard. And I think that's something we hear a lot in the book. And ultimately in the end, we get to see a little bit of.
And the irony too, that the one person who does see his worth, because in his eyes, he thinks the person that has seen the most worth in him is the mother, somebody who sees his full potential of the person he can be, when really, genuinely, it is Gella. Gella is the person who sees him for what he could be and the potential that he does have. And I think he denies that reality from himself for so long, given ironically that she's a Jedi, and the Jedi is exactly what got his father killed. So he holds that grudge. But on the flip side, Gella and Axel are two sides of the same coin in that they are facing these pressures of being the sort of perfect embodiment of a person. You know, Axel within the limelight of politics, Gella within the limelight of the Jedi Order and being the ideal Jedi and the Jedi that follows the correct Jedi code and edicts and is exemplary and can be great. Although she diverges from that path, she takes steps away from that path as a way seeker now. So she's walking her own galactic path, and that's why I think makes them so compelling as a duo. And even like I think of, you mentioned Kylo, like Rey and Kylo, like two halves of the same coin, like these people that see the worth in one another because they feel like nothing, right? But not to each other. And I think there's one conversation in this book in particular about perfection. And I think it's really when it clicks for Gella, when after they escape from the prison, he tells Gella, you know, you haven't changed, strong as ever, beautiful as ever too. It feels very Anakin, by the way. He's like, you're more beautiful than I imagined, you know? And
literally the prettiest girl I've ever seen is also like my closest companion in the world. Crazy.
And then Axel starts talking about how his mom, you know, he was born to a mom that was always expecting him to be something that he's not. And then Gella starts to feel this vulnerability about trying to meet the expectations of the Jedi and being surrounded by people constantly who are so gifted and so good at what they do. And there's this silence that fills the conversation. And that's when she kind of recognizes it. And she recognizes in that silence, like all the things that she's technically not allowed to feel as a Jedi, like that emotion. And she says, I'm always trying to be better, to work on my emotions, to work on perfecting how I am with the Force, how it works through me. But then she tells Axel, it's not about perfection. And then Axel's like, well, is it about other people being disappointed in your imperfection? And she says, wrong again. It's about existing outside of constructs like disappointment, imperfection, and imperfection. It's about trusting in the Force. And then he says, you're right. I don't understand. I, on the other hand, live amid the very real construct of having an overachieving mother who has no tolerance for my faults. And I just think that conversation about perfection is authentic to those characters because of the expectations that they do face. And perfection is something Gella dealt with a lot in Convergence, in some of her conversations with Creighton's son. But I think that is Axel being such an imperfect character makes him compelling and makes him messy and makes him authentic. And he's not always going to make the right choice, but he ultimately ends up on the right path. And I think I think that is realistic. You know, you're not going to make the right choice every single time, and you're going to use the situation around you to try to influence that judgment. And sometimes the situation is not always in your favor.
Right. And that conversation about perfection, that's not a quote I pulled, but I think it's a really, really good one because it hits on something that Gella says a little bit down the line, like in their final conversation with each other in the book, where Gella says to herself, like, she has a lot of mixed emotions about, you know, seeing Axel there, and she feels a little bit hollow about it. And she realizes that part of her way seeking journey is going to be examining her varying feelings, and that's going to be difficult to do. And I was like, dang, introspection is hard, you know? And I thought that was a really human thing too. That they both are dealing with these quite rigid structures around them and both trying to better understand who they are within them and who they are without them. And I think Gella going on her own path and doing some introspection, going to some therapy, if you will, you know, will be positive for her in order to kind of figure that out. And I also like, I alluded to this quote earlier that Axel says at the end of their conversation. And I would love to share that with you.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Before. Yeah, no, this is so good. Go ahead.
Okay. When I listened to this, I was like, oh my God. Bookmark. Okay. He says in chapter 32, I'm sorry for all the pain I caused you and everyone else. I'm going to pay my dues now. But I also want to thank you for always giving me a chance to redeem myself, even when I threw those opportunities away. For years, I was so blinded by my anger with the Jedi that I couldn't step past it. You taught me how to go beyond hurt and hate. It's a new experience for me. I can do my time knowing that out there in this big old galaxy, I have a real friend. Come visit me sometime. I won't have the best wine and cheese, but I can promise goodbye conversation. Goodbye, Jedi Knight.
My Jedi Knight.
Oh, I missed that. Sorry, I was transcribing.
I don't usually
the audio.
care, but that's an important distinction.
That's an important note. You're right. I was transcribing the audio as I was listening to it on 2x speed, so it was like press start, pause, instead of just like slowing down the audio,
that's
which
so
would
tough.
be easier. So anyway, this I think like this is like the quote of the book for me. Your conversation on I think perfection is like really good, but this is the quote of the book for me because
I agree.
It's so raw and so clear in its intentions, and it is distinctly hopeful. When we have like a story like Reva's, right? Like in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we have that incredible scene in episode 6 where, you know, Moses Ingram is just like acting with just like an incredible power as she cries and sits there. There's a glimmer of hope in that, right? Like it's emotional, it's painful. It is that first realization that there is potentially a better future out there for her, right? Like it's that first moment of realization. This quote is incredible because it's like 6 steps beyond that in the emotionality of it, if that makes sense. Like Axel has had that first realization. He's processed what that means. He's taken a first step, or he understands what the first step towards that will be. Like the hope for him is very concrete to me here. When I like finish Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm like, man, I do believe that Reva is, you know, going to walk towards a better future. Right? Like, I think she's going to take steps for herself. Like, but I don't know if she'll have a happy or even neutral end. It might be hard for her the entire road. I think that like Axel in this story is like, when I think about what his path is going forward, I think like it's a roller coaster that's going up, you know, like, and I don't mean that in like the Hazel Grace, I lit up like a Christmas tree, Fault in Our Stars kind of moment.
But he's not going to dip any lower, I think, than he is at this point.
Right. Like he's already kind of on the lift hill, and the lift hill is going up, and I think he's going towards, you know, something better, like concretely. He really seems to understand what he needs to do. Whereas like, that's what I'm getting at. I really feel like he understands what he needs to do for himself in order to get there. Whereas like a story like Reva's, she's just understanding that there is a hope at all. And I'm not saying that one of these stories is better from the other. I watched the Reva scene like 20 times at like 2 a.m. when that scene came out, and I cried, and like I cried in front of Moses Ingram when I brought it up. Like I got teary. Like it's a really important story for me, but I love how this is going beyond that in terms of the redemption process for oneself.
And also Axel recognizing why he was making the choices that he did, right? It was sitting with the hurt and with the hate. And it goes back earlier when he was about to send the message to his mom, and Oren and Gella walk in and try to stop him. And Gella starts to tell him, you've always wanted to burn through the galaxy like a supernova, but look at the damage you're leaving in your wake. Innocent people and people who care about you. You're incinerating yourself. You need to follow your heart, not the hurt that's been trailing behind you for years. And even like QN1 beeps at him, and she's like, you know, he agrees with me, right? Like the little droid is agreeing with me because he recognizes he's the one that's always there for you. And then to finally see him recognize like what she was trying to tell him in that kind of flurry of a moment, and process it and be like, no, you've been right. And it's just Gella's perseverance to keep believing in him. And I think it was set up so well in the very beginning of the book when Gella tells Oren not to believe anything that comes out of his mouth, and because he's always a liar. And then Oren says true, but it would be a mistake to condemn him before he even had a chance to prove himself too. And I think that just really set up the path for these two characters throughout the book. And I think that really sits with Gella the entire time. And it's like the conscience speaking to her the entire time, that voice in the back of her head that's like, yeah, it'd be so easy to cut him off and so easy to just characterize him by the sum of all of his mistakes. But then like, what good does that do him? And like, what good does that do you as a Jedi to see the worst in somebody and then write them off completely? Like the point of a Jedi is to be that beacon of hope, right? And you have to give that hope to other people. You have to be like, that's why like Luke Skywalker goes out and faces the First Order. He doesn't fight them. He just becomes a beacon of hope for kids like Broom Boy, right? And so Axel has his Broom Boy moment where he's like, yeah, life can be good. Life can be good out there. I have to find it, and I have to believe in it.
Yeah, and I think that like what's also incredible like about his quote is he explicitly like recognizes Gella's, and I think you kind of hit on this, but like he explicitly recognizes Gella's contribution to this. He really credits her, like, thank you for always giving me a chance to redeem myself, even when I threw opportunities away.
Well, and on the flip side, he viewed the mother as somebody who saw the possibility within him. And when, in the mother's eyes, when he threw, when he made a mistake, she writes him off and she gets rid of him. She tosses him aside. So and he's like, wait, this is the person I trusted my whole life. Yeah, and Bennett, yeah.
Like their confrontation at the end when Bennett's like trying to gaslight him and like cozy up to him and be like, get me out of this cavern and like get me on your ship. And Kella's like, he's gaslighting you, you know, like he threw you away 8 chapters ago because you didn't want to kill the wounded kid or whoever he was set up to kill. And then he, I don't know, he went to shoot the blaster and then he went to try and shoot it at Bennett, and Bennett was like, aha, I see.
Right.
You piece of crap. Like, and he threw him away despite their, and like Bennett made a lot of capital C choices in this story too. But like, I think Axel, yeah, he thought he was on this particular path and had these particular allies. And then one by one, they dropped him as he wasn't going along with their plans in exactly the way that, you know, they wanted to use him, giving him the opportunity to realize who's really an ally in his life, you know?
It's really, and also Kyong's contributions as a mother to finally say, I'm going to put my family first. So in some ways, Kyong and Gella sort of switched the place of Bennett and the mother. You know, Axel's always been looking at one group for approval and for acceptance. And then he realizes, actually, it's here. It's over here. I'm going to pivot to these people who actually have my best interests at heart and aren't just doing it for gain. Like we come to understand the mother just wanted Axel to get to the chancellorship. That was the whole, that was the long game there. It wasn't about Axel. It was about power.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have anything more to say about Gella and Axel in this moment? Because I would love to like just jump to like the mother being crap.
Just the fact that when he says, I want to thank you, and Gella says, for what? It says she blots her eyes on the back of her bandaged hands. I just want to say she was crying. She was crying in that moment in the hospital. That's all I want to say. Shout out. Shout out to Emo Jedi.
Emo Jedi. And close the book. That's all I wanted to say, folks. So with that, I think we should just jump to the mother a little bit and the way that because we're talking about the way that the path treated Axel, but like, let's talk about the way that the path treated the path in this book, because it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear that they were like, they dropped it as if they were hot, you know? The elders, the elders of the path, right? Like, the Herald is not in this book very much, is he? He's not in this book at all.
No, because he was
the Herald.
He was captured on Jeddah. And I think he's like in prison or something.
Okay. Maybe we'll get an update on the Herald in another book.
But he basically veered off the path that they had set out for themselves. And then the mother's like, you did that without asking me, and now I'm pissed at you. And then there's a whole schism.
Take a shot every time we say path. Drink responsibly in this episode.
Take a shot of anything of your choosing. Water, milk, Gatorade.
Ketchup. Not ketchup. No,
That's so
actually, you should
gross.
do it of water. Stay hydrated, folks. We really value your health.
Blue milk. Why not?
Blue milk.
If you're listening on Batu.
This is a side tangent for 2 seconds. My mom was like, can you pick up a blue milk? And I was like, Mom, I'm a Star Wars fan. You can't say that to me. She's like, what? And I was like, Mom, blue milk. She meant like the milk we go buy like has blue caps for 2%. We drink 2% in my house. I don't know. Make your judgments. And I was like, Mom, you can't mention the blue milk in this house. Anyway, Stay hydrated, folks, is the point.
Yes.
Of this side tangent. But I want to talk about the mother and the elders. So the elders of the path, minus the herald, who is now out of the picture as we just established, essentially like set up this whole battle, play the long game. They're playing the chess. They are the players on the chessboard, or they are like the players behind the chessboard, right? And they're like, let me move my pawn and my rook and, you know, like all my pieces, and then actually let me abandon the game. Like, have fun, guys. They literally all leave. And then when I think it's Enya Keen goes to try and talk to one of the path elders who's like trying to get on a shuttle to go, he's like, oh, that's not us. I don't have any control over them. That's the path of the closed fist. That's not us.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, the droids are killing your own people. And those aren't our people. Like, they literally drop them all. Like they are in it purely for themselves. And their goal to take down the Jedi or whatever. And like, they don't even care about their subordinates even a little bit, because they're willing to use their elders, their oldest members, as human shields, which is all kinds of fucked. Really alarming when I read that and like, you know, scrubbed back a little bit. And I was like, they what?
Mm-hmm.
They what? And then, you know, the droids are indiscriminately killing their own people alongside the Jedi and the Jedi allies. And they literally abandon ship. The mother abandons Bennett and was literally like, you wanted to be a leader, Bennett. And Bennett's like, where are you, mother? And she's like,
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
She's literally like, it doesn't matter. Like, they all abandon every single member of the path. And I was I'm not shocked, but I am. Like, I think as a reader, I was just like, and you what? It was so alarming to see the carelessness for even their own compound and organization. Like, they were willing to leave and completely start fresh purely for their own self-preservation.
It says here, quote, Yaddle could not speak for a moment. Leaving the elderly behind meant one of two things: either abandoning their weakest members or incapacitating the ability of any morally sound fighting force to attack the place. Knowing the infirm and elderly would be killed first. Both were unconscionable. Speaks volumes. And what's fascinating too, we talk a lot about the path's culpability in this fight. And we think of the Night of Sorrows and the reputation that it has, according to what we learned about in Phase 1 and what we hear about from Honesty Wef, and why the Dalnans hold a grudge against the Jedi. It's because of how many Dalnans were killed on this night. That's why they don't like the Jedi. It's why when the Jedi build their temple on Dalna, they're still like, they don't see eye to eye. And so the fact that too, that the mother can leave, and she can leave behind the trail that she set on fire, and nobody even knows who she truly is, and she's kind of this elusive figure. It leaves generational trauma. Like, this is a night that is passed down by generations to say, this is why the Jedi are not great. This is why the Jedi are bad, is because of what happened this night, you know? And I think it's interesting too that she is described as very gaunt, and her eyes are sinking into her head. Her fingers are bony. She's got more gray hair. She has a cane now, so obviously she needs that support there for walking. And it almost feels like her body is aging quicker than her mind and her spirit. And she's kind of Axel still recognizes that spirit of youth smoldering within her. And so part of me is like thinking of Palpatine, all those who have power fear to lose it. And it's like, she's literally holding on for dear life, trying to retain that power. And she's becoming so gaunt in the process.
If I may, hashtag egg talk.
Egg talk.
Egg talk. We're jumping all over it.
Oh man, we're going into egg talk.
Because
let me roll my sleeves up.
You know, it's like, you know, you literally know when like Palpatine becomes Sidious, and like then he gets all these incredibly deep wrinkles.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the leveler is eating her alive.
Yeah,
maybe.
Well, because we've theorized that she's force sensitive. So if she is force sensitive, is it feeding off of her force energy, her life force?
Oh.
You know,
it's a spicy take. You can tell we've hit the hour mark because I'm like, ooh, that's a spicy take.
We still got 10 more minutes till hour 15. That is consistently
really
the unhinged,
really.
Which we might hit the unhinged point during egg talk.
During egg talk, oh god.
Do we need to lay expectation for egg talk for new listeners? Like, what is egg talk? What do you need to know about egg talk? Or is it like rule number 1 of egg talk is we don't talk about egg talk, even though we talk egg talk.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, I just think like the mother's aging, like obviously we know that what is her species? Is she's
human? I think she's a humanoid.
She's human.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay.
About 90% sure she's human.
So anyway, she is a human, but I'm thinking that, something is clearly eating her alive, like, and I think it's, the power that the leveler she's having to rein in and unleash and all that stuff. It's very Sidious of her.
Well, it makes me think of the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, like when Gollum.
That's exactly it.
When Gollum gets the ring from Deagle, when he kills his own friend and takes the ring and goes into the Misty Mountains, he literally becomes this like decrepit creature who is just like, my precious. This is the only thing that matters to me, right? It's kind of what we're seeing with the mother here. It's like the leveler is my pet. It is my baby. I'm going to walk it around with me at all times. And I love this thing and it will do my bidding and it will level and balance the force for me. This is her one ring.
This is definitely her one ring for sure. So egg talk.
Egg talk.
I don't know where you want to go with egg talk, but I was like, we have to bring the eggs up.
Yeah. Let's talk about the leveler for a little bit because we've alluded to it, and I think if you want to know more about the levelers, you should probably read Path of Vengeance. That would probably be the book.
If you haven't read Path of Deceit yet, do that because it's good and also painful. Get your tissues ready.
Which I want to also make a point too to mention. For those folks who are wondering, like, why isn't the leveler featured more prominently or like more upfront in this book? And I still think that part of the leveler being a mystery and lingering on the periphery for our characters in the story really fits with what we should expect, right? Because the characters like Creighton and like Yoda, they're not sure exactly what it is, or do they? But there are a lot of characters who hear rumblings, who hear about what happened on Jeddah, who are now going to maybe hear rumblings about what happened on Dalna. So the mystery is still there. But what's fascinating is like the leveler is at the forefront of Path of Deceit and Path of Vengeance. I think the young adult has delivered some of the best. High Republic this phase. It's so good. They're so good. Justina, Tessa, Kevin, y'all did it.
I gotta read Path of Vengeance still.
I do too. But from what I hear, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay.
So no spoilers from us, but yes, egg talk. Let's talk about the leveler.
Yeah. The leveler is once again fucking terrifying in this story. It definitely exists on the periphery of this story, but we get a new insight into how the leveler operates and how the Jedi experience the leveler. That is deeply unsettling, especially if you're listening to the audiobook and you get the sound effect on the Mark Thompson voice.
You get the leveler slurp.
The slurp. I don't recall it probably.
Really? It consumes this Tevan Jedi? You don't even get a little bit of slurp?
I don't, well, but we don't hear his voice its voice.
Didn't you say in one of the audiobooks that you listened to, you heard the slurping noises of the leveler and you were like, I think it was Fallen Star or Rising Storm. I feel like I remember you talking about the slurp and you being like, what? You're like, I don't like this.
Listener, have I talked about a slurp?
I'm pretty sure. Somebody find the receipts.
We've said this very unpleasant word, slurp, now a lot of times on this episode. This is alarming.
Egg talk, hashtag leveler slurp.
Hashtag we're about hitting 115. Like it's all making sense.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know, it's all coming together.
I don't know about the slurp, but we do get this like really unsettling voice when I think it's Creighton's son sees or feels the leveler, and the leveler literally says, I have this quote, I pulled it. You're doomed, Creighton. You don't matter. Nothing you do matters. And it's like in a very modulated, creepy voice. It's unpleasant to listen to. Shout out to the audio editors. But I think in the past, we never got the understanding that the leveler like spoke to people. We just got like the understanding that it like gave off the wavelengths of like, holy shit, I feel fear, debilitating fear for the first time in my life. And I am literally going to sit in the corner and like rock back and forth until the leveler eats me and I turn to dust. And we were like, shit, that's terrifying. But when you listen to the voice of the leveler be like, Creighton, you're nothing. Nothing you do matters.
But not to me.
And like,
and then the leveler reaches out his hand.
And that's why I want to eat you and turn you to dust. Love you, bestie. There's this real sense of like a very, very unsettling nature. And I'm going to pull one of my odds and ends here, which is the fact that Sippa, who is the Padawan with Yaddle that we follow, or she's a youngling, she has like infrared vision based on her species. And like she can see the leveler with her infrared vision, like eat a Jedi,
silver.
essentially.
Yeah, the leveler is silver, and then she sees the light go out.
Right. And like the warmth of the Jedi go away really quickly. And like it's just like increasingly unsettling to like have more visual and mental images of like what the leveler looks like. Okay. There was a time, folks, if you got into the High Republic later than like the release schedule happened, there was a time when we just like didn't have a full understanding of what the leveler looked like. And then those comics came out and we were like, shit, it's big, scary. And now I'm thinking about like the fact that it can talk to you. Okay. Like I, as a reader, I'm struggling. This is terrifying.
Yeah.
And like to get this added element of it and understand the leveler in a different way was just like very alarming. Yeah. Anyway, that's me off my egg talk soapbox for the moment.
All right. Well, I'm gonna step on my egg talk soapbox, which I regret for all of you, but no, it's good. And but I keep thinking of these TikToks that I keep seeing recently, and it's like this guy who he's like playing a sarcastic, like it's like a satire character, but it's like every TikTok he's like the caption's like every guy with the podcast, and the guy starts with like, can I blow your mind? Carl's leaving the room because I always talk about this every single time. So that's how I feel right now. I'm like, can I blow your mind? I'm like, can I blow your mind, Sarah, with the leveler? Okay, so can I blow your mind?
Great
Sarah's already leaving. No, so in all seriousness, I'm gonna step on my soapbox here. So the leveler, right? What's so interesting about the voice is I think of like the insecurities that we feel and the insecurities that Creighton feels, and where does a lot of insecurity come is fear, right? And the whole question of the High Republic is, what do the Jedi fear? And I think we've really come to realize that the leveler is fear incarnate. It's a physical manifestation of fear. So I think it was really interesting that it is actually talking now and like relaying to some of those insecurity, or it's relating to some of those insecurities that these characters feel, and really digging their claws into those to try to make them completely succumb to the fear. And I don't know if you caught this as well, but Ada, she describes it as saying, it felt like my mother was dying in front of me and I was the one killing her. It couldn't have been real, but it felt real. I've never felt so much fear in my life, Creighton. It didn't make sense. I never even knew my mother, but it was so horrible. And then Creighton says, I felt like 1,000 hands were trying to drown me, inviting me into oblivion. It was fear, true fear, the deepest and worst I've ever encountered. And nothing I told myself could convince me otherwise.
That's depression, folks.
That's awful.
Yeah, no, that's really terrifying.
I think that's like, actually the worst I've ever heard the leveler be described as those two descriptions.
Specifically Ada's though. Like,
yeah,
I didn't even know my mother, but it's as if I was watching her dying and I was killing her.
That's dark. That's so dark.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about all of this, though, I think, honing in on Creighton's reaction to the leveler, because he said, nothing can convince me otherwise until I got angry. And so here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. So in phase one, we talked about Trail of Shadows. I guess slight spoilers for Trail of Shadows. We saw Emmerich Cantor face the leveler, right? And he starts to feel that fear. He starts to hear the voice, the shriekarakarai. And he, in that moment, like turns to the light and overcomes his fear by embracing the light and realizing that fear is just an illusion of the mind and that sort of thing. Fear is the mind killer.
We're just bringing up all the references to all the other major franchises in this episode.
Yeah. And he's able to slice the leveler's hand off. Win-win. Emmerich survived. He's one of the only Jedi to ever survive an encounter with a leveler. Congrats to you, Emmerich. You're awesome. I can't wait to read more of you, hopefully, in Phase 3.
A legend.
Truly. Everybody read Trail of Shadows, even though I just mentioned something that happens in the 5th issue, but it's fine. It's fine.
It's really good because like the first issue is like one of my favorite Star Wars comics ever.
Yeah.
It's really good.
So we have like embracing the light on one side of the spectrum, right? That's the light side. What is the other side of the spectrum? It's the dark side. Where does the dark side manifest? Fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering, right? And the whole question of the High Republic is like, what do the Jedi fear? That was like the impetus for this initiative to be created. So I'm going to read this here. Actually, Sarah, do you want to read this for me? Because I'm talking a lot. I'm vamping a lot. I am on page 11 and I've
11?
highlighted it for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys,
So why
we
don't
have 14 pages of notes. Brad did most of them. Shout out.
Yeah. Why don't we read? Why don't you read the section so I can stop talking for a half second here?
Okay. Fear leads to anger here is our thought. The more he reached out to the Force to gain control and clarity, the worse it became. As a child, he remembered being attacked by other children well before he was a Jedi youngling, and being filled with so much fear. The terror he felt now was similar, a pure, cold emotion. But as a child, there had been another emotion that came alongside the fear and replaced it, rage. He had ended up fighting hard with gnashing teeth and nail gouges and dirty punches, overwhelming his attackers until they lay around him with broken bones and raggedly bitten skin. A similar anger filled him unexpectedly now, an almost primeval instinct. Inside his head, Creighton roared. The relentless tendrils pulling at him began to dissipate. Creighton breathed, inhaling the stench within the room, a stench that could have been real or hallucination. He couldn't tell. But the horrific sensations mercifully faded, slowly at first, but then more quickly the longer they stayed in the dark.
Holy shit. That's like dark. And so I think it's so interesting to see the way that Emmerich dealt with the leveler by turning to the light. And here in this moment, we see clearly that whereas Emmerich went from fear to the light, Creighton on the other side of the equation is going from fear to anger to rage, right? So he's starting down the dark path. And when he starts down that dark path, the effects of the leveler fade. What do you make of that, Sarah?
Well, I did not pull out this quote myself, regret. And you said it to me and I went, what? Mind-blown emoji, scared face emoji, wobbly face emoji. The one where you feel pretty uncertain. That's when I use the wobbly face emoji.
Yeah.
It just, it freaks me out, Brad.
It does. It should.
That's the bottom line here is like, we have seen all of these Jedi succumb to the leveler because they don't get past the fear. They're stuck in the fear. They don't go to anger. They don't go to hope. They don't go to the light side. They just are stuck in the fear. So the fact that like he moved to anger and anger solved the problem for him, frightening. I'm sorry, I really don't have anything like really insightful to say.
No,
like,
that's exactly, you're totally right. You're totally right.
Because I feel like we'll learn more about it in the future and then we can look back at it and think about this particular instance. But like, it doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well for our future Jedi. That's for sure.
And what is Phase 3 called? It's called Trials of the Jedi. And what is going to be
people your theory?
What is going to be the theory? What is going to be the trial of each Jedi in Phase 3? It is, how do you confront fear? And we know from Luke in The Rise of Skywalker, confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. So how do you actually confront fear is the question. Do you confront it by going to the light because it is the light, as Qui-Gon says in Master and Apprentice? Or do you go down the dark path? Do you turn to anger, to hate, to suffering because it is easier, because it is easy to give into that hate, that primeval instinct, as like Creighton refers to it as, and then you start down the dark path, forever consumes your destiny, right? And so I think we're going to have to see like which of our Jedi walk each of those paths in phase 3. Like what is their trial gonna what is going to be the outcome of each of their trials? And some of those Jedi might not take either of those paths. They might take a middle path and walk away completely. We know in Duke of Jedi Lost, there's a Master Trennis who becomes part of the Lost 20. We know that it hasn't been confirmed, but it is likely going to be Keeve Trennis. And why does Keeve Trennis walk that middle path and leave the Order rather than wanting to confront the fear potentially? And she just says, I'm out.
It's so interesting to me because that quote from The Rise of Skywalker, I hated that quote. I fundamentally disagree with that quote. When that quote happened, right? Like, I was like, confronting fear is not the destiny of the Jedi. Like, I'm very much of like a, not fighting what you hate, saving what you love kind of a girl. Like, and also like my favorite Jedi is librarians kind of girl, like that's how I felt about the Jedi. But like, High Republic is really reframing that for me. And I finally, as you bring up that quote within this conversation about fear and within this conversation about what the High Republic is all about, it reframes that quote for me, because very much, especially in this era, the legacy of the Jedi and, the Jedi's destiny is, overcoming that fear. That's how they survive in this era. And so like, I think that's, a really interesting reframing that's happened for me, and that I'm liking that is happening for me, because I think it's interesting. What was your question?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't.
Sorry.
I don't even know if I had a question or not, but I totally agree. I think it's so cool that for a movie that didn't necessarily work for us, we're reframing some of those quotes in a new light. And I think fear, like confronting fear, we maybe initially thought of it as like, take out your light sword and kill the bad guy that makes you scared, right? But really, like, fear is more of an internal struggle. It is like in those moments of fear when you're scared. Obi-Wan talking to Leia, right? Like like when she asks Obi-Wan, like, what does the Force feel like? And he's like, have you ever turned off the light? Or have you ever been in the dark and the lights are off? Like, and you feel scared? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, what does it feel like to turn on the light? That's the Force, right? So like for the Jedi in phase 3, it's going to be, do they turn on the light switch, or do they sit in the fear and die and become leveled, or do they turn to the dark side and deal with it that way? Again, do they just leave altogether and become one of the Lost 20? Like, it's so fascinating to me. And like, that has to be where this is all going. Like, the leveler is like a scary monster, but like, it literally is just a physical manifestation of an emotion of fear.
Yes.
And I think that is so cool. I think that's why the High Republic is some of the best storytelling, because it is actually saying something about like the human condition and like how we overcome fear, like in our struggle to exist. And it is saying so much more than I ever could have imagined. And it's brilliant. It's so good and so rich and so emotional.
You were talking again, and I was like, oh, I have the thought that I was thinking the first time you said something, and then you kept talking and you had other great points, and I lost.
Think of it.
No, I mean, you were talking about like who's going to go face it in the hopeful side, who's going to face it in the neutral side, and who's going to face it in the dark side. And like the Lost 20, I think, is where you left off in your other comments. And I think that is like a more real solution for some than we fully understand, because that like the fear can overwhelm you so much that it leads you to inaction, right? Or maybe like the simple action of just walking away from the situation, which, like sometimes that's the right answer. Like, I'm bringing up Jungi, but he has this great quote that I love a lot. And he was responding to somebody who said, like, I quit my dream today. And he said, it must have taken a lot of courage to give up. And like, maybe this neutral path, which we're seeing as the Lost 20, which we feel and is framed as this like negative thing, right? Like Dooku is part of the Lost 20. He turned to the darkness, and Master Trennis is part of the Lost 20. We don't know what happened to Master Trennis yet, but like we see 2 dots and we're drawing a line, but maybe for some Jedi, maybe for Trennis, maybe for others, like the Lost 20 isn't a negative choice as much as it is a neutral choice. And that neutral choice is the best choice in the moment. I don't know. That's just something I was thinking about. But also none of my Jedi better die. I endured a lot of trauma at the end of phase 1. I would not like to go through that again.
You know, I hate to say it, but I think Elzar and Ava are going to be on opposite sides of that equation, of that trial.
Do not take it back and out of the podcast. Do not let the people hear it. I don't care. Like, I'm going to cry right now. Don't, Brad. I'm fragile.
And we've talked about...
I need good things to happen to me.
I think we talked about this. It might have only been on Patreon when we talked about this before. Maybe, I forget. But I think ultimately the thing we can look at the High Republic as is the greatest thing we have to fear is fear itself. Like it is that quote. You just had a moment of realization. Did you remember what you were going to say?
I was going back to what I was thinking about before, which is when I forgot the before. I'm just like a step behind you here. But it's like, what's so cool about the Leveler being this external manifestation is that it's like this external manifestation of an internal manifestation, which is just a part of nature. So it's like, if we're going back to grade school, it's one of my favorite things to bring on the podcast is there are 3 types of conflict: man versus self, man versus nature. Okay.
Man, you're really throwing me back right now when you think of it in those terms.
You know, sometimes you've got to bring it back to the basics.
Yeah.
And on the outside, this could be seen as a man versus man, right? Like this is an external battle between 2 entities who are in a fight. But it is also a mirror. So it becomes like a man versus self situation where it is the personal overcoming of fear that is the way to have success.
And we have seen a lot of imagery too of the Leveler's eyes and Jedi reflected in those, right? So literally a mirror. Seeing yourself in those eyes of the Leveler.
Don't say these things here. They hurt me. But also when you think about fear is just a natural part of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm interpreting nature not only as like the world around us, the physical space, but also human nature, right? Like fear is a very natural emotion for us to encounter in our daily lives. Like there's this like hustle bro culture of like, you know, if you don't fear and if you take care of your body, you'll be rich and healthy, you know, but like, that's not, there's no reality. There's no basis in reality of that. Like as humans, we experience the wide and vast range of emotions. And that's what living is, you know, and there's power in every single one of those emotions. And like, so it becomes like a man versus his own human nature situation, which the Jedi in their code clearly do suppress certain emotions, which is not the world's healthiest because I think there's a healthy way to go about that, but the Jedi are not always good at conveying that messaging. Yoda.
Yep.
Yoda, who is capital W wrong here. But like really, so I think there's an interesting way that this particular conflict between the Jedi and the Leveler and the Jedi and the Nihil and the Jedi and the Path is really just all of the types of conflict rolled into one, in which at the end of the day, like the mirror is held up at your face and you're barefaced and there's not a sight of makeup on your face and you just have to look at yourself and deal with it. You really have to see yourself.
God damn, don't you love the High Republic?
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. That's why we're here. That's Brad. What will we do? You know, when I look back at some of our best core friendship memories, a lot of them have to do with the High Republic. Yeah, it's good stuff. I wouldn't be spending, you know, hours here with you talking about it if it wasn't, bestie.
Yeah. But I'm so glad that we could have this conversation because, I mean, again, we've had this specific conversation before, but I think seeing Creighton turn to rage introduce like an entire new layer of the onion, of the Leveler egg talk onion, that like we're like, right. Oh yes, it's fitting the hypothesis, the dots are connecting, it's all fitting together, the Leveler and the fear and everything is the key to all of this. It's so good. It's so good to like see it all come together. And that's why I think like phase 2 is such a core spot for like how our heroes are going to deal with fear in phase 3. Like it's Creighton. Creighton is the knowledge, right? And I think that can maybe lead to our next conversation here, which is Midnight Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, we covered this book last
1,000 years ago.
Spoiler alert for Midnight Horizon.
Yeah, speaking of spoilers, where has Comac Vetus? I am still looking for him. I miss him.
Where did he run to?
I'm really concerned.
Is he
for
still
him.
running?
Yeah, I bet.
Reith needs to find him and go, why are you running? I would love to see that meme with Reith and Comac. I would love it. But at the end of Midnight Horizon, so Yoda comes to Corellia. He saves the day, but he also brings this hooded figure that is a mysterious person that we never know who it is. But they're uttering the words Shrika Rekarai. So like there's somebody who have obviously a knowledge of the leveler and
are messed up because of it.
Yeah, Yoda specifically found this unnamed person to be like, help us, please. We need your help. Why this person, right? So let's flip to the end of Cataclysm here. And it's after this very lovely emotional funeral that we have, and Yoda and Creighton's son are walking the hallways, and Creighton is very bothered by the leveler and the things that he felt. And he asks Yoda about the levelers, and Yoda says, I too know of them. Powerful beings they are, dangerous they are, but in pain they could be. Only a few understand them, you and I, and still much to learn is there. And then Creighton asks, where did they come from? Is there a larger danger here? Many unanswered questions we have. I gotta use the opportunity to do the Yoda. Much we have to discover, but most important, yes, a larger danger there is.
You're doing it because we're past the hour 15 mark.
Okay, I won't do the rest of that. But it says here, Creighton imagined what might happen if word got out that there was a weapon against the Order, how it could decimate the Order. Against his will, a swirl of terror, like a mud grabbing at his legs and trying to pull him down, entered his mind. He felt like he was suffocating, and he took a deep breath and shook his head. No, they needed to keep this quiet until they knew it was what its true nature was. Creighton says, you realize how catastrophic if word gets out. Quiet we must be. revealing these nameless creatures, we cannot. Perhaps it was isolated at Jeddah and Dalna. Since the Night of Sorrow, we have heard no further reports.
Because everybody who's that's because everybody who's encountering him is dead.
Guys, use your 2 brain cells here.
Gone they could be. Find out more I can.
It may also be best if we keep it out of the archives entirely.
You know, I just wanted to go back to some thinking, and the thinking is if it does not exist in the archives, it does not exist.
It does not exist.
Now we knew that was wrong, obviously, because we went to Camino shortly thereafter. Okay.
And then Creighton looks at Yoda and they nod at each other. And Creighton says, we'll never speak of this again. Not until we know more, and with certainty. Yoda nodded again. They exited the archives, each walking away in a separate direction as if they had never spoken.
Now, let's talk about this. You dumb fucks. Like, I get it. We don't want to raise the alarm. We don't want to be like the boy who cried wolf. But the problem is that people are dying. The Jedi are dying. And people are turning to ash. Okay?
This is bad. This is very bad.
And now there are 2 people who know about it who decide they're just never going to talk about it again. Okay.
So to bring it full circle, they say we will never talk about this until we know more. And let me tell you, Creighton's son is the hooded figure. This is a hypothesis. We don't know for sure, but I'm almost 99% positive Creighton's son is the person that Yoda goes to find. And now they know more. They know enough to bring him back and say, we have a working knowledge of this. Now,
it's like so fucked. Okay. Like,
this
how many more
raises
Jedi
questions.
had to die? Okay. How many more Jedi had to die before Yoda got his fucking shit together?
This is so bad because when we also think of the Lost 20, how are Jedi going to receive this? How are they going to feel with the reality that Yoda and Creighton potentially knew about this monster, this weapon against the Jedi Order, and said nothing for 150 years? They kept this a secret.
I just have some thoughts, and it's like Yoda is not my friend right now. I used to crush on Yoda. Okay, love of my life as a child. Okay, now he's my enemy.
Fucked up I have.
Like,
yeah, Yoda, you have.
Like, it just frustrates me that like we'll never speak of this again. They exited the archives as if they had never spoken. Like when we share our knowledge, we all reach better conclusions. You know? We share our data. We get better results. You know, that's why like people have peer-reviewed journals. Like that's kind of like the whole point, okay? Like I'm just so frustrated about this.
I think this is why some people will leave the Jedi Order, though. I think when they find out what was hidden from them, and there is a
Bell.
Bell's out of our one of the Lost 20 because of what happened to Loden. I wouldn't put it past Bell.
You know how we both reacted to that scene. I just can very distinctly remember like Bell's pain in that moment.
Yeah.
But also he's going to find Buryaga and they're both going to leave the Order and they're going to be like, bye suckers.
I would love that, honestly.
Buryaga's going to give Bell a big hug and then they're going to go like, they're going to go like be their best therapy buddies throughout the rest of their lives as they leave the Order. Maybe that's the best path for them. They can bring Ember too. Ember can be emotional support puppy.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's very interesting that Yoda deletes this crucial bit of information from the archives, and then his apprentice Dooku then also deletes a crucial bit of information from the archives that leads to the downfall of the Jedi Order.
I'm just saying Yoda's in the wrong.
I'm just saying, Yoda, karma really bit you in the ass. Like you kind of played yourself a little bit here. You made a really bad decision.
I understand that we're being a little bit reductive about this whole conversation here. But like, oh my God. Like, this is such a consequential scene. You finished the book a little bit for me and you were like hyping the heck out of the scene. You're like, Sarah, you'll know when you get to the scene. And I did know when I got to the scene. Did I feel you overhyped it a little bit for like how muted the scene actually is? Maybe. Okay. Maybe. But what you were getting at is that the implications are gigantic and you're right. You're right about it. I'm so mad about this. I'm so alarmed about this. Like I get it. You don't want to cry wolf. You don't want to cause mass panic among the Jedi and everybody.
Right.
But at the same time, people are dying. Your people are dying. And the reason why you don't have any other reports is because they're never getting to you because people are dying. This is how this works.
And deleting whatever working knowledge that you had from the archives. And now that working knowledge is with you, Yoda, and with Creighton's son, which is why Yoda was like, in phase 1, he says, oh shit. Oh no. I gotta go call up my boy Creighton's son. Let's get him back here.
Those are not the actual words in the text.
Oh, sorry.
Oh shit. Oh no.
Oh boy. Gotta call my boy Creighton's son.
No, but you gotta do it in the Yoda speak, like, my boy Creighton's son got a call.
We're so unhinged. But like, I think, we talk, I mean, again, like the best judgment you can make in that moment with the facts that you have and the knowledge that you have. And we are obviously approaching it, like you said, we're a little reductively with the knowledge of concealment leading to the downfall of the Jedi and why the Jedi get extinguished, because they kept, the dark side at bay. They didn't talk about that. It built up in the background. And then that's what leads to the rise of the Sith. Right. And so like, we're approaching it as like, and also the fact that the idea that history repeats itself, that Yoda concealed something 150 years ago that led to the mass purge of Jedi. And then the Jedi conceal again, and it leads to another mass purge of the Jedi Order that literally ends it.
If I may.
Oh no, I know what you're doing. I knew it. I could see it in your eyes. The hunger.
Listeners, say it with me. The legacy of the Jedi's failure.
Oh no.
We've done too many of these podcasts.
We need to have like a jar where like every time we say like the legacy of the Jedi is failure, or I talk about Elzar Mann's bare ass naked butt, we have to put $1 in the jar.
We have other ones, which I've mentioned like 2 or 3 times on this episode already. It was like one lone candle can ignite the stars.
I'm really guilty of that in interviews. Obnoxiously.
Sarah bring up the K's Wrath device. What's the other one? Whenever we bring up that one Comac Vetus quote, to divide the light and dark, and it
the
is
Ram
an act of violence
quote too. Also,
Part for the part in the whole. We already have one because you mentioned it, but you
shit,
butchered
you're
it.
right.
The part
Yeah.
for part, the whole for the whole, and each part for the role it plays, not for what you want it to be, not for what it is.
Jeez, yeah, I did really butcher that.
For
That's
what it
pretty
is.
bad. That's really bad.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop. We should.
I love how we're
Honestly,
talking about like a
those
very serious like concealment scandal, and we're like, like just giggling about it. Like, no, people are gonna die. People are
no,
gonna
but
die.
we really do bring up the same like 6 things whenever we can. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, guys.
Listen, when I was reading this book, I just did not expect this to take a turn because we got this really beautiful funeral scene. We got this impassioned speech from Creighton. We got Yoda and Kyong throughout the book, and Kyong talking about Yoda's kindness and the friendship that they have. And I'm like, wow, Yoda's like a real go-getter. Like he's all about like no emotion, let go of those who fear to lose. But like he's kind of BFFs with Kyong Greylark. That's really cool. And then boom, 3 pages left in the book, and you're like, break all my trust, you two. Yeah, fuck it. Why not? You suck. Okay, cool. I guess just let all the Jedi die. It's fine.
I didn't expect this either. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. I'm pissed. Yoda is my enemy now. Like I don't know. It's just like everybody's making choices that will harm them going forward. Except for Axel, who's making choices that will maybe help him going forward. And Kyong, who's making choices for herself to help her going forward. And Gella too. But not Yoda, not the Jedi Order. Only the people that have not in the Jedi Order.
But if I may, I guess we can kind of end this sort of saga on concealment and egg talk with the actual prophecy itself from Master and Apprentice, which is
Add it to the jars.
Add it to the jar as well, the prophecy.
Our jars
yes.
that we bring up.
Yeah. Only through sacrifices of many Jedi will the Order cleanse the sin done to the nameless. The danger of the past is not the past, but sleeps in an egg. When the egg cracks, it will threaten the galaxy entire. When the Force itself sickens, past and future must split and combine. So now the question remains, like, Yoda does mention that there is a little bit known, or he knows about these creatures. So my question is, like, does he know what the sin done to the nameless is? And we know that there is a book called Tears of the Nameless for Phase 3. So like maybe the Tears of the Nameless will give us a little insight and illuminate what happened to the nameless to maybe make them the creatures that they are. Like, why is there a rod of power that controls them and takes away their free will, right? Like, it makes them bend to the mother's will and her needs, right? Like what happened to the nameless that made them what they are and that made them want to feed off the Force?
I've never thought about that before.
Yeah.
I'm a little speechless over here because I don't know, maybe we've discussed this before, but you know, my memory's not so good these days. Like the idea of the free will being taken away as the sin done to the nameless.
And it's interesting too, because this prophecy was originally thought of as in the context of the clones, and the clones being the nameless, and the sin done to the clones. Like, their free will was taken away with Order 66. They had a chip that told them what to do, and they had no choice. You know, so
we have to say, on the point for this being about the clones, the past and the present, or the past and the future must split and combine.
Mm-hmm.
That's some Palpy cloning, Snoke cloning, Moff Gideon cloning stuff right there.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
Moff
some
Gideon
good food.
is not dead, as my nan would say. That was just a clone that died. The past and the future must split and combine. So they're the clones. You know, I don't know if wow. Okay, really, now I'm thinking about that in terms of clones, and maybe it's just about the clones and where we've got our Delulu hats like square on our heads and they fit really snug. But we'd love to bring it up when egg talk, because they do say egg, and you know, eggs, lots of ways to prepare them.
And it's so fascinating though, like, only through the sacrifice of many Jedi will it actually cleanse that sin, right? So like, I think now, you know, as much as Phase 3 is going to be about the trials of the Jedi and like how they face fear, on the flip side, like, do the levelers get a happy ending, as weird as that sounds? Like, does that sin actually get cleansed? Like, do they return to some peaceful form? Are they returned to Planet X where they can live a peaceful life? Like, maybe the sin done to the nameless is just removing them from their home planet and making them weapons, which, when we think about it, that's kind of what happens to Jedi, because they're taken from their planets and turned into weapons for war. That is very interesting. Interesting.
Food
Food for thought.
I feel like there's
Food
a
for thought.
lot of potential sins to the nameless. Maybe they just want to exist with the Force, and being used as a weapon is a huge problem.
Maybe the sin was that one of the Jedi ate a peanut and the levelers have a peanut allergy, and then the leveler ate that Jedi and then had an allergic reaction because of the cross contamination, and that's the sin done to the nameless. Who knows? I have a peanut allergy, so that's just on my mind. I don't know.
As I said, there's a lot of ways to prepare the egg.
Really, yeah.
And maybe peanut allergies plays a role.
Maybe a peanut is the thing that's cracking.
We're very, very clearly past the hour 15 mark. Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of ways to think about this, and I wonder if we're assuming the sin to the nameless is specifically like a High Republic sort of prophecy. I wonder where we'll get the clearest image of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, I guess, in the sense of like, what is the resolution for the leveler? Because obviously the leveler and the Jedi and the Force using people like cannot coexist in the same forms that they're currently in. So it makes me wonder, like, I don't feel like the levelers will be eradicated from the, like, they feel like one of those things that maybe they're being used as a weapon right now, but like they feel like a part of the Force because of the way that they use the Force, if that makes sense. Right,
and
like,
they're an absence of the Force too, in some ways, right? Because they are like this great leveler. They balance the Force when
eat it.
Yeah, exactly. They consume. The one Jedi said, "I was consumed," before he turns into dust and he has the ash flakes off his mouth, and
oh, that's so messed up.
Yeah, I don't see a reality in which, like, I see a reality more so like if the Jedi can heal the levelers in some way, like if they do confront fear through light, like maybe that involves healing. Maybe that involves closure for the Jedi, and maybe they can finally feel all the spirits of the Jedi that were consumed by the leveler. Because right at this point, like Bell doesn't feel Loden Greatstorm's like spirit. He doesn't feel like he actually transformed into the Force, because I think the leveler truly consumes your Force. Like, even it doesn't allow you to transcend into the cosmic Force upon death. Like, you actually die. Like, that's it. That's the final story, right? So like, how fascinating would it be if this all ends with the nameless, the sin being cleansed, the nameless becoming good creatures, and all those Force users feeling the deceased again through the Force, like Bell
like
feeling
the release into the cosmic Force. Maybe
they all get released back into it, and Loden's like, Bell's like, oh my god, I finally feel Loden in the Force. Like, I feel like he's there now.
Maybe their absence of the Force is the fact that they're connected with the living Force, but not with the cosmic Force.
Yeah. So much to ponder. Like, this is, I'm so fascinating how it's gonna get resolved. So,
well, let's put a pin in it, and let's chat in 2025 when members of BTS will be back from their military service, and we can find out what happens.
And right before we go to Tokyo and ride Star Tours 9 times.
9 times.
We're doing it 9 times.
Money.
Although, who knows? Maybe when we read Path of Vengeance, we'll find out everything that we're talking about now is nonsense.
Maybe we're just only slightly ahead of ourselves in this conversation.
Everyone listening's like,
guys,
cringe, ultra cringe.
Together. Yeah. Okay. I feel like we would be remiss if we did not spend a little bit of time talking about our favorite mom in this book, Kyong Greylark herself.
Absolutely. I think what a good place to end on with the discussion about her and motherhood.
Yes. So, we've discussed, I thought about a thought that I had about a long time ago, and I wanted to bring up Screecher's Reach in our conversation about Axel and the steps that these characters are taking, because like in that moment, our main character, Screecher's Reach, she commits an act of violence in order to like move forward or like get a better life that she believes is better than the one that she has then. And like, I think that's a similar feeling to what Axel and, Kylo Ren or whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, wanted to make the connection because I thought of it again. Anyway, Kyong Greylark, back to the topic. Thank you for letting me bring up Screecher's Reach in this incredible tangent. Because that conversation was like a full hour ago. Anyway, Kyong in this story really gets to step more into an active role and to a complex role. And I'm really grateful for the way that Lydia wrote her, because she gets to be a really complex, multifaceted, like middle-aged woman in a Star War. Incredible. Like an absolute feat of nature. I would love, I yearn for the day, like when I no longer have to be like, oh my God, a complex adult woman in a Star War who gets to play on so many different ideas and themes. Like incredible. We're slowly but surely getting there. Anyway, she gets to be Chancellor and then not Chancellor. And she gets to be a mother who has a difficult relationship with her son and who tries to rebuild that. She gets to be a badass and she gets to make conscious choices for herself. And I think like there's this conversation when it comes to women in real life and with characters that's like, why? And I'll specifically talk about this with like the end of Shadow and Bone for a second, like the end of that trilogy, when Alina essentially gives up her powers in her final battle with the Darkling. Sorry, spoilers for this. This book series came out like a decade ago. I'm really sorry. But she like gives up her powers and defeats the Darkling and becomes powerless. And then she gets the romance in the end with her childhood friend Mal. And he's a bad boyfriend, but that's another conversation for another time. But like she ends up getting that like happily ever after at the expense of her powers. And it feels like, and then there's this conversation about like women in real life and women characters of like, why do they have to choose between power or romance or like powers and love? And I love it when the choice is more complicated than that. And the choice is, more nuanced than that. And the choice is more thoughtful than that. Because I think, yes, women can have it all. Women can have the power and the romance. The romance is not a detractor as part of their character. It doesn't make them weaker, right? Like male characters get the girl and, get to be Captain America or whatever, So Kyong in this story makes this really conscious decision to leave the chancellorship and be a better mother. And to me, while she is choosing one thing versus the other thing, it comes from a lifetime of understanding her situation fully and then like making a choice to do better for herself. And that choice in that moment is to be there, be very present, be very vocal for her son as his mother and not as the chancellor. So like, yes, there's a choice that's happening, but it comes from a really complex character perspective. And I think that's the difference. I have just stood on the soapbox very tall with, my shoulders back and with my megaphone up to my face for a couple minutes here. So I'm going to stop doing that now and let other people on this podcast speak. And there's one other person on this podcast, so I'll let him do that now.
Yeah, that's a fascinating read on her character, honestly. And I echo that. I think she does have a lot of like agency in this book, and like that complexity was so on display, and sort of the messiness of her, and her also acknowledging some of her failings and some of the ways that she has not been the mother that she's wanted to be, and also the fact that like she's had to juggle those two worlds for so long, right? Like, I am the Chancellor of the Republic. So like, yes, some parents are out there and they say that they would do anything for their kid. But like for me, I can't really share that sentiment because like every decision that I make comes at the expense of the Republic. It affects the entire Republic. And I can't have that same sort of privilege, and that morality is blurred a little bit more. And so even for her, like sending Axel to prison is a little bit disturbing because she is getting flack for her son being a murderous person, but also like I think she legitimately like wants him to have a second chance in some ways. Like she still thinks that like there is something still there. And even like Yoda kind of affirms that with her and saying like there's still good in him. Like it's just the bad influences around him that's corroding that a bit. And so that friendship too is really helpful for her, and that kindness from Yoda to like see that like maybe I shouldn't like give up on this guy, my son, completely. Like maybe there is like still a chance for me to save this family.
There's definitely, I think, like a real push and pull, like a reflective push and pull that I think women often experience. It's like, where do I place my priorities in my life? If I am a mother, like, do I focus all on my kids? I read this book, and it was called, this is not a book about Benedict Cumberbatch. Honestly, it's a great book. I really highly recommend it. But there is a part in there, and that's just the reason that I bought it, was like, as a mother, I feel very guilty when I indulge in my hobbies because I'm not focusing on my kids. And in society, that makes me a bad mother at times, right? So like, I think that, or you know, people who are career minded, okay, well, I have to focus on my career and make sacrifices for my kids, right? Like there's a definitely push and pull that we see from Kyong in her life story thus far, but also that equation gets changed for her in this book. And, you know, it's a little bit of the counsel of Yoda, and it's a little bit of the realization of the desperation of the moment of where Axel is. And she, I think, realigns her priorities to something that becomes, or she realizes is a lot more meaningful for her in that moment. Like, she lost her husband and she's about to lose her son. She has the galaxy, I guess, but like, that's not love. That's a job and a weighty responsibility. And I think for her to get a little bit down and dirty, literally, like, but also like to strip off some of the, maybe pretension is the wrong word, but also maybe it's the right word, of her possession in order to set the push and pull in a different direction for herself is really interesting.
What a power move to give up the chancellorship. Like, I thought that was, I was unexpected. And I know she makes a point to say, I knew the one way to power was through my position. And if I gave that up, then the path has no means to gain that power. And Axel, when he hears about that, it says, he thinks to himself, Kyong Greylark had given up power because previously the title had always come first before her love for him. Mm-hmm. For the first time since he was born, she was trying to put Axel first. Now, of all times, she was trying to show the depths of her love. And I think in that recognition in his moment, it was like, okay, Gella hasn't given up on me, and my mom hasn't given up on me. My mom was somebody I wrote off a long time ago. And there's this story that Axel thinks of as well when his mom took him to like a children's hospital where children were waiting for like cybernetic eye transplants, and they were going through and talking about like the miracle medical opportunities that were on Coruscant and like how we can help these children. And like Axel's looking at all these kids who are like in desperate need, and he's like, I want to go home. I'm tired. And when she brings Axel home, she's like, can't you have any sympathy like at all? Like where, like, and then he's like, where's yours, mother? And then she says, you're right, Axel, this is my failure. And like in that moment, he's like, oh, I'm her failure. Like, okay, like she's recognizing in this moment, like I'm a failure as a kid. And so he sat with that for so long, and to finally see like she gave up like everything to prove to him that like he was not a failure, like beyond redemption and beyond saving. Like that's so freaking powerful. But like also at the same time, she's not just doing it for Axel, she's doing it for herself. And she's doing it because she has forgotten herself in the process. And she even admits that when she's in the hothouse before she goes, she gets the message from Axel, and she's starting to kind of tap into some of her old routines. And she says to the droid, everyone thinks of me as a fancy woman of means who isn't in touch with anything or anyone. I had some pretty intensive training in the Coruscant Academy before I decided on a life in diplomacy. I used to get my hands dirty. It's just been far too long. And as she gives up this position, she's flying a ship, you know, like, and Axel's like, why didn't you ever tell me? She's like, you never asked. And then she takes out her blades, like ready to stab some people. And she's like, for everyone else who isn't like part of our group, we are looking for a quick and merciful death.
I was like, oh my God. Like, that was a bold thing to say coming from the former chancellor of the entire galaxy.
Right. And like Axel says, Chancellor Greylark had always seemed a formidable person to have as an enemy, but Kyong Greylark was pretty terrifying. Thank the stars they were finally on the same side. So we see like Kyong Greylark becoming the mother she was always meant to be, or at least like starting the path towards that, because she's not automatically like the best mom in the world. Like she's still got to earn that in some ways to Axel, and Axel still has to earn the being the best son he can be. So there's a two-way part of that, but she's embracing a part of herself that she has forgotten. Like all those days that she worked hard at the academy and got her hands dirty and learned how to fly and to fight and to be this just intense force that became the chancellor in the first place, like I think in some ways that chancellorship, that pride bloated her mind a little bit and got to her, and she became way too prideful that it was her downfall in the end. Like it made her ignorant in a lot of ways.
And I also think like I want to hop back to like there's a courage in quitting kind of idea.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because it's a bold decision to like give up your entire life's work, right? And say I'm going to focus on one person instead of everybody. And I think it's kind of it feels good to unlock a part of yourself that you thought you had lost. So like the courage in quitting and making that bold choice for a next step ultimately unlocked other doors that allowed for further connection with oneself and with others. And like I think that's something that Kyong immediately realizes, especially in the quote that you just kind of talked about, which was like the finally on the same side moment. It allows her for a greater connection to herself and to her roots and to her understanding of the world, but it also allows for her and Axel to be on the same page, to understand each other a little bit better. There's I guess not an upside, but like the opportunity cost. One door closes, the other opens.
It takes a lot of courage to quit, like you said. And I think it relates to our own world in a sense where, you have people who become workhorses and they live to work rather than work to live, and they lose themselves, and they get excited by the money and the opportunity and the power that comes with that position, to the point where maybe they aren't the father or the mother or the family member they previously were. And like, they become so out of touch with themselves, and it takes so much effort. And I think a lot of people have gone through that in the last couple of years during the pandemic, where we've been so dug into our own work, and the pandemic happened. We were like, wait, like the things we actually value, like being able to just like go to my family's house and see them, like actually like see people and like see friends. I can't do those things anymore. And now I'm just stuck with the work. And then like being stuck with that work sort of allow people to put that in perspective. Likewise, I think Kyong, she puts her son in prison and she's getting all this flack for it. And in a lot of ways, she feels the isolation that we felt in COVID. She feels like everybody's out to get her and that she's alone. And like, it makes her have a lot of introspection to the position she's in. And she's like, is this really worth it? Is it worth it to have all these enemies when I could actually have like the person that I can share the most love with in my son? Like, is this really worth it? And a lot of people during the pandemic were like, this job isn't worth it. It's not worth overworking myself and hating my life for a paycheck. I'm going to quit.
Right.
I'd rather be unemployed and like spend time with my family and the people I can love as much as possible and as safely as possible.
Sourdough starters together, Yeah, I think it's like either you're stuck with work or you're like finding hobbies for the first time and you're like, wait, my life can contain multitudes? Wow. Mm-hmm. I want more of that, and you're definitely right. I think that's what Kian is seeing. Like, wait a second, I can shift for myself and ultimately have a better connection with the people around me.
And even also having a good connection with Malo. I think one of my favorite things was her connecting with Orlin Malo and encouraging him to use his voice, and the fact that like he never actually needed her to help him do anything. Like, he always had that courage within him and comforting him in the knowledge that like you'll be fine as the sole chancellor, like it's okay. And he has his moments in this book. Like I was actually surprised by how much I ended up loving him throughout this book. Like he gives this very impassioned speech to the monarch about like, put your freaking boots on and let's like solve this thing. Like you think you're protecting your daughter Ziri, but you're not. And the monarch's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it. And he's like, wait, really? You know, and so he has that moment. And you know, at one point Kyong's like, I feel a great speech coming, like one that's going to change the foundations of Irem and Arano. And he's like, I'll always need you, friend. You know, like there's such a camaraderie there. And I think like Kyong is also very comfortable with the decision because she knows the support system that's around her, and she knows that she's leaving the galaxy in good hands. Like we have to acknowledge that. Her successor is like the best possible choice. Somebody who's always been out on the front and understands the galaxy and the way that people interact with one another throughout the galaxy. So
I also think that like her stepping down and them seeing each other as friends and not as simply colleagues who one operates from the core and one operates from the outer rim, will allow them to have a closer relationship going forward, which will ultimately help Malo lead. And so I think that's good too. And I agree with you. I really liked Malo in both books. I find his voice to be very clear as a character and as like a leader figure. So I quite like this character.
Shout out for Higher Institutes of Learning. Kyong does mention that she wants to start up a school about intergalactic affairs for emerging New Republic civilizations. I think that's very cool.
Add it to the list with the Bothawui Institute of Quantitative Studies. Is that it? Is it quantitative studies? Wow, it's been a couple years.
Yeah. I know, right? Oh my gosh.
Bothawui.
We're way past due for Alphabet Squadron reread.
We are. Oh my God. Anyway.
Yeah.
Different book, different day. Do we have anything more to say about Kyong or our chancellors or leadership?
No, I think I'm really happy with her character, and she's somebody that I would leave phase 2 thinking that she's one of my favorites. Favorite characters. And I love that we got a lot of her and Axel, like kind of having that connection. Like we got a little bit of that banter back between a mother and a son. And I'm just appreciative of any mother-centric stories in Star Wars. And I thank Lydia for writing that because we need it. And we need also not dead moms in Star Wars too. So
not dead moms, alive moms, please.
Yeah. Most importantly, she didn't die, which was like the critical thing I was worried about.
Yes. I'm right there with you.
But I think that leads us to our odds and ends, which is the things that we didn't quite get to in the episode, but we like to end on and shout out. You know, we don't want to forget these things necessarily. So, you wanna kick us off with some things that stood out to you?
At one point, Ziri has to be a diplomat. She's not a diplomat. She's like a military captain. So she finds a century-old tome on diplomacy with chapter titles such as Cultural Immersion and Mastering the Languages of the Mid-Rim, and one she makes up called Preventing Imminent Death Through Conflict Resolution. And I thought that was great. And I just liked that we got a bit of, I mean, it was like a hollow book, but it was a book nonetheless, and it kind of had a higher learning vibe to it. That's it. That's the whole thing.
I know we didn't talk a lot about Ziri and Fontu. I think they are less of a focus in this book.
They're still great.
They're still great in it. I love that. We start with them not really sure how to navigate marriage and to like be rulers and also be husband and wife. And they kind of get to a point where they're really comfortable with that union. And that union does end up being important for the two worlds and actually bringing them together. So I do like that. It wasn't all for naught. Like the marriage did actually matter, and like that love did save the galaxy and that particular region. So that was very like uplifting, you know, that it wasn't just like didn't work out, let's get a divorce, you know, like they actually they worked at it and they made it possible. Despite all the obstacles that they've had to face.
Absolutely. What's one of yours, Brad?
I want to mention that the Greylark's apartment, there's a mention of their foyer, and it's shined with cut Jalukan Jalukani fogstone and glistening curtains painstakingly embroidered by ancient artisans on Tanu.
Tanu, where have we heard that before, Brad?
Tanu is from Young Jedi Adventures. It's the main planet that all of our characters are training on as Jedi. So that was really cool. I love that little nod to another High Republic piece of media.
Absolutely. I didn't catch that, but I'm glad you did. Another one for me is Enya Keen we have a little bit of understanding of how she got her crystal on Ilum, and it called to her, so she wedged herself 3 meters into a crevasse to get her crystal on Ilum. And
it's a tough journey.
It's a tough journey, and I'm just thinking about Cal Kestis on Ilum and like ice caves. You know, that's really it. Ice caves. That's it. Bye. Yours.
Enya Keen was also a bright spot in this book. I love that she really rebuilt the droid from the ruins of Aram. And also she took Orin's lightsaber, I believe, because it needed a home. Charl Roy. Yeah.
Charl Roy.
Right. Oh, she gave the Orlan's saber back with him to be buried with, I believe. I forget what she did with that saber. She found 2 different sabers, I thought. I can't remember.
I think that Gella was using Orin. Guys, here's a small criticism from this book. Too many similar names.
Am I saying Orlin? Yeah, I meant Orin.
Orlin Malo, Orin Darga, Charwell Roy, Chancellor Orlin Malo. Creighton's son. Okay, lots of O's, lots of C's. Difficult for my brain. Yeah. Difficult for my brain to wrap my head around, especially when I'm listening in an audiobook format, and especially when the characters are like all good characters, but they're not like the level of character that I'm in love with, like Comac Vitus or Elzar or Avar. You know what I'm saying? Like they're all good characters, but they don't each have like such a clear and profound identity to me that I'm able to like keep them all straight. So I was a little confused. So I think Enya has Charwell Roy's lightsaber crystal that she has in a second lightsaber. So one of her lightsabers I think lights up blue, and the other one lights up yellow gold.
Gotcha.
By the end of it, and I think Gella, because Axel and then Benot has Gella's lightsabers, that she takes Orin Darga's lightsaber after he dies from the poison glove. Benot, piece of shit.
We might be completely wrong too. I don't know. I don't remember.
I think I'm remembering correctly, but like again, there's a lot going on in this book, and this is
the
a very
Night of
fine
Sorrow
detail.
is a blur. It's all a blur.
But yeah, 2 of them are buried with their kyber. Oh, not they're buried with their kyber crystals. They're kyber crystals, and I guess this will go just into one of mine. It's just like the kyber crystals are put in the kyber arch at the end of the funeral service, and then Enya gets asked, like, I think by Fontu, like, if you don't mind my asking, where's Charwell Roy's? And she's like, I got it. I didn't give it back. And the whole point is like, I think she had a conversation about it, and ultimately she felt like she was communing with that crystal as well. Like it wasn't done. So there's something still left for her to do with that crystal and with that lightsaber, a mission, a purpose for her to fulfill with that weapon.
I love that. I love how like kyber crystals have personalities and like spirits, and that they like
I thought that was really
and like the way that like Gella's 2 crystals talk to each other, and that's how she's able to find Axel. I thought that was really cool. So they're like little babies. We got to protect them. I want a little
kyber baby.
Little kyber baby. Okay. we're now hitting the 2:15.
We need to go to bed.
Unhinged, yeah. Okay. One of mine was Orin Darga. Just the fact that he is freaking hilarious. Saying like, "What's this boyo like?" Which first time we've heard the word boyo since Jar Jar Binks, which I love. And when talking to Axel about the medicine that he's getting, it says, "Looks like that juice they're pouring into your arm is working. Now, if they could only give that to me after I've had a barrel of Corellian wine, then I'd be fixed up right smart." And then Axel's like, "Is he really a Jedi? Is he qualified?" And then there's also like this running bit about how much he loves hot noodle soup, and like if he had all the money in the galaxy for when somebody said his name wrong, he would be opening up his own free hot noodle soup shop. And then Axel's like, really? That's what you would do with all your money if you'd open like a hot noodle shop?
I was like, why not?
So yeah.
I would make myself my favorite meal all the time. What do you on about? Like, doesn't everybody want to open up their favorite food shop? Like,
it's giving like Uncle Iroh energy because like Uncle Iroh like opens up a hot noodle shop, I'm pretty sure.
Oh no, he's got his tea shop.
Oh, it's the tea shop.
He's a tea guy. He's a tea guy. Or I don't know if he has a tea shop, but he's a tea guy.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I love that energy. I love that energy of somebody who's like, I just want to open up a restaurant or like a tea shop or like whatever, so that's great. But I will say his dying words are so brutal. He says, Gella, when you remember how to laugh again, think of me. Like, come on, Lydia, you didn't have to stab me in the heart like
That's
that. When I was just loving this character. Come on.
Yeah,
come on.
Really, really fun to enjoy. And then we got stabbed in the heart. Ouch, hurts.
So sad. So sad.
To bring it to more like a hopeful note, we get a new Guardians of the Wills prayer. It's called a sunset prayer. And thank you, Brad, for grabbing this quote. In darkness, cold. In light, cold. The old sun brings no heat, but there is heat in breath and life. In life, there is the force. In the force, there is life. And the force is eternal. I have no comments on this. Thought it was interesting. That's it.
I do want to mention Yaddle. When she is talking to Fontu and they're talking about crashing the ship into the Path compound. And Fontu says, this is suicide. And Yaddle says, no, it is fighting for life and light. Good luck. May the force be with you. And I'm pretty sure that's the first mention of for light and life in phase 2, I believe. So I'm like wondering if Yaddle kind of coined this phrase a little bit or if that became like sort of this like symbolic phrase. I might be completely wrong, but I thought this was the first time we'd heard it. In phase 2 mentioned in this way. Because obviously phase 1, they're always like for light and life, and they charge forward.
Like, yeah, for light and life.
Yeah. So I thought this was the first time we'd heard it. I might be wrong.
Now, there's a quote here that I was like, well, this is an obvious plug to something else. And I mean that with all due respect, because you got to have reference to someone else, but it comes out of nowhere, okay? He cared less about what happened to the fallen than what was about to come. Glory through the closed fist. The mother had never appreciated Benot, but now she wasn't here for him anymore. Forget the past. Marta Rowe had seen the future. Where did that come from? Respectfully, where did it come from? It came from the fact that we need to go read Path of Vengeance. Okay, I get it. We're about to do it, okay? I was like, but like also the way that Mark Thompson says it in the audiobook, it's very like muffled or low toned in his voice. And so I had to go back like 3 times. I was like, did I just hear Marta Rowe? Wait a second. Marta Rowe had seen the future. I'm sorry, hold on. Let me go one more time. And then I slowed it down. Marta Rowe had seen the future, but it was still low tone. And I was like, I guess he just said Marta Rowe. I guess I'll bookmark that. It was just such a random thing. I understand what they're getting at, I think, with regards to the path overall. But it's one of those things that flies by so fast that you're like, if you haven't read a story with Marta Rowe in it, you'll be like, oh, whatever. But if you have, and then you're like, wait a second, she hasn't been mentioned this entire book. And then here she appears.
Yeah.
It's a little silly. Anyway, not a like the world's most nitpicky thing to pull out. Anyway, that's it. Bye.
It's less of a book problem and more of like a corporate synergy machine, sort of systemic,
right. Of
detail.
Course. Of course, yeah.
It's all connected. Go read Path of Vengeance is what we're saying, because apparently it slaps, and I can't wait to read it. So,
looking forward to it.
All right. Well, I guess our last one here will be mine, which is the funeral scene itself, which I was so happy to see us back on Coruscant with that chamber, the burial, and the light shooting up into the sky, and they literally like cleared the air traffic so that the light could go up. And we've only ever seen this in the Clone Wars, this sort of burial service. And I believe it's the episode where Obi-Wan fakes his death.
And I've seen this. I don't think so.
It's very interesting. And then he shaves his head, and then we get the bounty hunter Obi-Wan. Anyways, but it was cool to read about it in the book. And Creighton gives this really uplifting speech, and he says, all lives have a beginning and an end. With every beginning is born hope and goodness. No matter how short or long those lives are, the galaxy expands to meet them at every tide, every sunset, and every breath. Whenever we are weak or weary or doubting, it is hope and goodness that will buoy us all. They offered their lives to keep this light alive. All of us shall carry the gift they so selflessly gave. And now they are at peace, living with within the everlasting light of the Force, a light that exists within everyone here. And so too do our fallen comrades exist within us. As stars are born and die, so does time move forward. relentlessly so. And yet we fight. We will never stop fighting for the light and life in this galaxy. And then it describes the scene and it says the beacons of light grew so vivid in the room that soon they outshone even the brightest star in the galaxy or in the night sky. And to me, that was sort of giving like the end of Light of the Jedi when all the Jedi put their sabers up in the Starlight Beacon and the beacon shines out across the galaxy. And so for me, I think that really encapsulates like the hope of this book and I think why it's the last thing we want to end on, because again, even though that despair is on the horizon and we know like what's coming for the Jedi, there is this moment where it's like we recognize like what these Jedi died for, and like it is to carry on that light. So like, yeah, even though bad things are going to happen to the Jedi, I think like ultimately they'll get to a place within the High Republic era that they remember to carry that light, right? Like when they do face that fear, they will remember like carry the light. Don't succumb to the dark. Like follow the light within yourself, because there is light within each of us. And I think that will be the trial of the Jedi in phase 3. So I thought it was just a beautiful monologue by Creighton to end the book on.
I agree with you. I don't know if I have anything more to add other than the quote itself. I picked it out and thought it was like, this is really meaningful and thoughtful.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this discussion. Yeah, we did it.
Wow. Proud of us.
2.5 hours, folks. You got some good High Republic content.
We were like, we'll do like an hour and a half and then we'll go to bed.
We never understand the assignment here.
No, we've
been
doing this for so many years at this point that we should
know better.
We should just do better at understanding how much we talk. Like really.
Yeah.
Alas. Happy to be here. I think we had a good conversation. I hope the listener agrees.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I can speak for both of us in saying that we really enjoyed this book, and we will be back to talk about Quest for Planet X and Path of Vengeance. And those are 2 books that are also extremely fun and will be exciting to discuss. So I cannot wait. And we hope that you join us for that journey as well. So make sure you are following us on all of our socials, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, so that you see those episodes when we post about them. You also want to be subscribed to our podcast feeds, so that those just automatically drop right into your queue and you can listen to them whenever you're ready and whenever the book is finished for you. And then if you'd be so kind, leave us a 5-star written review, help other High Republic fans find our book discussions, join in on the conversation, and it makes us feel good too. It's always good to get feedback and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we also have a Patreon where tiers start at $1. Again, as we talked about 2.5 hours ago, it's the only place we talk about comics, and we do plan to catch up on all the High Republic comics that we have not yet read over the summer here. So if you want to listen to that, that's where those are. Thank you to our patrons, Ben, Brian, Cheryl, Clay, Deborah, Dylan, D. Sizzle, Emma, Huang, Jennifer, Katie, Knights of Ren, Leanne, Levi, Lucy, Lindsay, Matthew, Rob, Saber Bouquet, Santa, Sky Chalkers, Stephen, Tom, and Travis. We're very grateful for your support. And thanks for everyone who went on this journey with us. Hopefully reading this book was not a cataclysmic experience for you. And hopefully that like together we have converged on some ideas. And hope to see you when we go on a quest together to Planet X. Yep,
I see what you did there.
That's the end of my monologue.
We'll be back with a vengeance very shortly, and we're going to have a lot more to talk about. So thank you all for listening. And as always, until next time, may the Force be with you always.
Bye.